That is Mama June's chair, and that is the other chair that I would sit in when I came to see my mom. So what I'm going to do in honor of my mom is I'm going to do this memoriam for her. And, you know, normally we probably would have had a funeral, and I would get up and say a few words because she asked me to get up and say a few words. And here's the story behind that. When my dad passed, I told Mom, I'm going to get up and say a few words about my dad. And she said, no, you're not. And I said, yes, I am. And she said, no, you're not. And I said, Mom, I'm going to say a few words about Dad. She said, you're not going to no, you're not. You're going to break down and cry. I said, no, I'm not. She said, you're absolutely, I said, yes, I am. So what I did was I went to each of my sisters, Debbie, Shelley, and Allison, and said, give me a story about Dad. And they all told me the story. So I told each of their stories and then my story at the very end. And, you know, I've worked on some things to talk about Dorothea June Evans Smith, who was born June 1st, 1926 in West Hazleton. She went to high school. She did not go to college. There was money set aside for her to go to college that she didn't get. Her grandmother wanted to leave the house to her mom and dad. The sisters got involved and brother, and there was a dispute of the will. They disputed the will, and, you know, that's the way that went. But she recently only told me that maybe 6 months ago. But she would sit in this chair and she would drink from one of these cups. I think all the grandkids want one. All the sisters, the siblings want one. The children want one. And she would always make me give it poured in half full. Had to be half full. And she'd always say the same thing. Would you get me a cup of coffee? Yes, ma'am. Just half a cup. I like my coffee hot. She had a couple sayings. One of them was, be gentle. I haven't had my 2 cups of coffee yet in the morning. She'd also say, always be dressed for cocktails, which meant always be dressed up. Unfortunately, not very dressed up. And she would not like that. But my nice stuff that I've been wearing all week, sitting with her, is kind of dirty, and I'm kind of down to this. So forgive me, Mama June. June went to work for the telephone company after high school. And then she met my father. And the story is that he walked up to her. She was with a group of girls, and he didn't walk up to her. He asked somebody who she was, and then he asked for an introduction. And the girl introduced Bill to June. And then Bill called her up on the phone and asked her out for a date, and Mother said no. And so he'd call again, and he would say, June, I'd like to see if you would go out with me on a date on Friday night. And June would say, I already have a date for Friday night. And he would say, well, how about Saturday night? She'd say, I'm busy as well. So finally he called her and said, I want you to go out with me next Saturday night. And if you're busy, then I want to go out with you on the next Saturday night. And if you're busy, I want to go out with you on the next Saturday night. So tell me what night you're not busy, because I want to take you out on a date. So when he showed up, he didn't look the same, because all the men who had come back from World War II wore raincoats, did not shave, and hung out on the corner. hanging on the corner, watching all the girls go by. That song was about them. They were displaced. They had come home from war. They were drafted out of high school. So many of them never returned at all. There was no counseling for them. And Daddy fell into that group. And so when he showed up for the date, June didn't recognize him. He had cut his hair, he had shaved, he had on, I think, like a suit or something he had borrowed or something, and he looked like $1 million. And he said to her, "You don't recognize me, do you?" And she said, "Who are you?" I think. And they went out, and thank goodness that happened. As I tell my children all the time, you know, I know I'm difficult to live with, and I know I'm nuts and crazy, and I know your mom and us, you think we're nuts, but we two don't meet. You're not around. You're not alive. So thank God that Bill met June, and Bill and June had 5 children. Had Debbie, David, Shelley, Tracy, and Allison. And, the first 3 are a little bit different than the last 2. By the time Tracy came around me, I think they were kind of tired of raising kids. So Alice and I pretty much fed it for myself. My favorite story is my big brother David. I'm 6 years old. I'm in the kitchen. Mom's at work. Dad's at work. It's the summer. We're not in school. And I say, "Davey, what's for lunch?" And he said, "Whatever you make." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "There's no lunch. You want lunch, you make your own lunch." So I learned how to make my own lunch. June moved to Memphis in 1963 with her children in tow. We lived on Stonewall and rented a house in Midtown. And Mama told me a story about the back part of the property. So they were renting. They didn't own the property. And there was a sharecropper's house. And there was a sharecropper that lived in the house. And Dad found out that this man was living on the land in close proximity to his family. So I'm pretty sure he said to Mom, he'll be fine, he'll be okay. But unfortunately, I think that person wasn't a good person, and I don't know if he was peeking in the windows or he was doing something he shouldn't do, and Daddy had to go out there and tell him to leave. And I guess he told the property owner to leave. There was a big field behind the house, and we had a dog, which was a schnauzer named Piper. That would be the first schnauzer of many schnauzers in the family of schnauzers, and that's why we have all these schnauzers up here. They started collecting them, and all the children would go and find a schnauzer and send it to them for presents. But there was a big field out in the back, and my brother was quite inventive, and I don't know if Debbie was there. I know Shelley was there. I know Allison was little. I was little, and David was there. And we David, I'm pretty sure, decided to catch birds. So he got a box, he got a stick, he got string, and he got maybe corn or something. And sure enough, he caught 2 blue jays. Well, the blue jays were in the box, and it was time to go to the grocery store. So we all piled up in the station wagon, went to the grocery store. We left the box of blue jays and the dog alone at home. That probably wasn't the wisest choice. When we came home, there was blood everywhere, feathers everywhere, lampshades knocked over, and feathers in Piper's mouth. He had eaten the Blue Jays. But we lived there for a short period of time, and then we moved to 2004 Nellie in Whitehaven in a brand new house, in a brand new development. One huge bedroom downstairs, 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms upstairs. 2 full baths, 1 up, 1 down. A kitchen, a den with this paneling, a back door where the laundry was, the washer and dryer, and we all grew up in that house. Debbie went to UT. She was homesick, so she came back home. She went to work for Dr. Weigel as a dental hygienist. Davy went to Bishop Byrne. Debbie graduated from Whitehaven. David went to Bishop Byrne. Shelley went to Bishop Byrne. I went to Bishop Byrne. Allison went to Bishop Byrne. We all went to Bishop Byrne. And Debbie met an optometrist by the name of Michael Long. And so when I first heard Michael Long was coming to dinner, I asked if he was Oriental. And Michael sat down, and I'll never forget this. Michael, the very first time I met him, sat down on the couch with me, and he was very talented art-wise, extremely talented. And I'm pretty sure he made a cutout of a cowboy. He would take pieces of paper and fold it, and then he would cut it, and the cowboy had bow legs and a hat. And so I was pretty enamored at that point, because I was pretty young and easily influenced. I'm just kidding, Michael. And he sat down at the dinner table, and Bill, June, Debbie, David, Shelley, Allison, and we had dinner. And Mom was quite a cook. Mama June was quite a cook. And at one point, Michael asked for some white bread. He wanted to sop up his gravy. We never had white bread at the table. We never sopped up our gravy at the table. So June got up and went and got the white bread, and we all just sat in silence. June worked for the telephone company for a long, long, long time. Before that, she worked for Key of the City, and that was like a welcome wagon. And she would take myself and Allison downtown Memphis to get her supplies, her marketing supplies. And Mom would get lost in Memphis in the car on the way home. And I would say, Mom, I know the river, the Mississippi River's there, and the highway is there. So if we head towards the river, we'll find it. And so eventually I would help her to navigate. I told Bill about it, and I said, we need something to help Mom. So he proceeded to buy and install a little compass that sat on her dashboard in a little ball, and it said it was east, west, or whatever. So whenever she got lost, I'd say, Mom, you're heading west. Go that way. We'll find the Mississippi River. We'll find the highway. We can get home. June worked at the school where I guess Shelley went, I went, and Allison went. David went to, I think he must have started at Bishop Byrne as a freshman. I don't think he went to St. Paul, not that I remember. Anyway, Mom would volunteer, okay, at the school and pass out milk and things like that. And, when you're a young man and your mom's there and you're with your friends, it's kind of like, hi, Mom, and it's a weird thing. But the craziest thing is that June decided one day that she was going to make a wall of everyone's picture. And she had a baby picture, and then she had a, high school graduation picture, and then a graduation from college picture. That was her intent. But at that time, she had a picture of her and Daddy. And I had never seen it before. And as a young man, I looked at it and said, oh my God, my mom is a babe. And it was just one of those things. She was a beautiful woman, but she was my mom, if that makes sense. Anyway, June volunteered there. June volunteered for the Republican Party. She was a Republican for a very, very long time. She worked the polls with Daddy, and she would always tell me and tell all of us the same thing. If you want to make some changes, get involved and make change. Certainly if you don't vote, you can't complain. And certainly if you're not involved in trying to make change, you can't complain. And she was absolutely right, of course. June worked at the telephone company for a long time. One of my favorite stories about June is she had to go to work. And it was so bad outside. Memphis doesn't really get snow. Memphis gets ice. And Memphis got a big ice storm. And she said she had to go to work. And I said, Mama, you're never going to make it. You're never going to make it. Please don't go to work. Well, she got in the car and she went to work. Then she called me and said, I'm in a ditch. And I said, okay, where? And she said, on Winchester Road. I said, okay, I'll be right there. I'm not sure how I got there because I remember getting the big white Cadillac that we had, the Coupe de Ville that weighed 1 million pounds. And once it started sliding, there was no stopping that car. And I got it out of the ditch and I drove her on to work and dropped her off. And I drove all the way back home. And this is Germantown to Whitehaven. It's quite a haul. And then I went and picked her up at work. But how in the heck I ever got out there to get her, I just don't remember. That's a kind of a fond memory. June doctored all her children. I had the mumps and measles at the same time. I think I told Shelly, Allison, or Debbie the story. I was seeing things, and she was putting cold compresses on me and whatever home remedy she had, and I really thought I was going to die. There's several times that I thought I was going to pass. Mama was a lightweight. When I say that, if she had one cocktail, that was the limit, and that was it. Back in the day, they all smoked and drank, and Mom smoked, but she couldn't smoke. Her pack of cigarettes would last 2 months, and they were stale. Eventually, she gave up smoking, and Daddy gave up smoking. Well, I remember when Mom was at Bell South, and they had a big party for her, a celebration, and we all went out to the phone company. Allison was there. Shelly was there. Dad was there. And someone got up and said, is there anyone here who would like to say something about June? Nobody got up and said anything. And at that point in my life, I said, I'll never let that happen again. So I've gotten up and spoke on someone's behalf many times since then. And it's because it's the right thing to do. The reason why someone doesn't get up and speak is because number one fear is death. Number one fear is public speaking. Number two fear is death. So I read a book, And I guess I would say to all y'all watching this, when my brother passed, he had several books. Some of them y'all know about, but one of the books was on death and dying. And I read that book on death and dying. And that helped me a lot. And I will reread that book. I will have my time to mourn. Everyone will mourn in the same manner. I have a prayer for Mama June. I want to finish what I need to talk to you guys about with her. Later on, Mama June and Pop moved from the house on Nellie and bought the house on 8363 Poplar Pike. Gorgeous house. Gorgeous house. Everyone that knows that house loves that house. God, back hallway, bonus room, just a fantastic house. So the Mama June story, there's several, but the one I remember the most involves my father, Billy Jim. They were quite the pair, and they had lively discussions. And so the discussion was over the windows. Bill had decided he was going to put storm windows on, and June absolutely refused. Well, June came home one day, and there were storm windows on, and they were brown. And she was so displeased. One time, she sent Daddy and I to go get a refrigerator on Poplar Pike. And I didn't know anything about appliances. Daddy did. He worked for Dice Rose as a salesman in West Hazleton. But I didn't know anything about refrigerators. And whatever Mama told him, I didn't know what she told him. But she told him to get a certain color refrigerator. He got whatever he wanted. We had to take the refrigerator back the next day. Oh my gosh, she was so angry at him. But she loved him so much, and she missed him so much. And the doctor in the hospital, the last visit, said she's very depressed. She misses your dad very much. And so I called, well, my boss called me to check in. He called me yesterday, and I said, our hope is that Mom passes before the 16th. August 16th is my brother's birthday. And he had a different perspective on it. He said, wouldn't that be such a great present for your brother? And what he meant was that she would join him in heaven. And I said, yep, absolutely. And so Mom went one day early. She went very peacefully. She was loved by her three sisters, her brother, me, her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and her son-in-laws, and my spouse, her daughter-in-law, Stephanie. So everyone is going to grieve and process the loss of our matriarch. So my prayer is this: in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear Almighty Father God, please watch over our beloved Dorothea June Evans Smith, aka Mama June. Let her be happy and with our brother David, our father William, and our beloved Lindsay, Shelley's, and Nick's daughter. We ask that you help us. You help all the family members at this time to be strong, to grieve, and to go through the process. And all family members need to honor our our beloved Dorothea June Evans Smith, Mama June. She was one heck of a woman. So I'm going to end on this, which is my favorite story about Mama June. It involves my niece Lindsay. And Lindsay was in this apartment. Lindsay was over at that oven right there. And Mama June was firing from the hip. She was telling me something, telling Shelly something, telling somebody something. And and Lindsay turned around and looked at me and said, "That Mama June, she's one feisty old bird." And I'll never forget it. And I'll never forget my mom, and none of us will ever forget June Smith. Rest in peace.